I'm Jackie. This is Beyond the Pattern, and today I'd like to show you how to grade and clip an inside curve, such as you might find on a curved edge on a neckline or on the top of a skirt that perhaps does not have a waistband. You might find on your pattern that it will be called trimming or clipping or grading. Those are all terms that can sometimes be used interchangeably, or some people use them interchangeably. But I'll show you how to do that right now. I have sewn together two pieces of fabric, and we're going to pretend this is the neckline of a dress or a shirt. It has an inside curve. I've stay stitched it. You can check out my video on stay stitching to show you how to do that. But I've sewn these two together, and we want the floral print is going to be our fashion fabric, so we want that to be on the outside, and this pale pink is our lining or facing. We want that to be on the inside. And this is important because after you finish your clipping and trimming, you don't want to have a visible ridge on the outside of your fabric. So what we're doing is we're doing something called grading, which is creating a bevel where there's a gentle slope for the layers of fabric, which is really important if you have a thick fabric. It's not as important on this fabric, which is just a thin cotton or cotton batiste. But let me show you how to begin with this. We're going to start by trimming off about 1/8 of an inch of the seam allowances. Now, once I've done that, I want to make sure that the longer piece of seam that's left is going to be on the outside when these get turned. So I'm going to now take an 1/8 of an inch or a chunky 1/8 of an inch off of the lining or facing fabric. So holding this so that it is, I'm doing this singly. All right, so here we have it. And now we need to clip this. So this is an inside curve. So we need to allow, there's too much fabric outside, so we need to allow for that fabric to compress when we turn it. And the way to do that is to create space by cutting out little wedges. I like to start by cutting the fashion fabric first, only up to the stay stitching. You never want to cut through the stay stitching. So we're going to start on the fashion fabric side. The stay stitching is to the inside. The seam line is just slightly beyond that, either on it or slightly beyond that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these layers one at a time. We don't want to make notches. A lot of people will just make notches like this when they're doing their trimming. And they'll cut through both the facing and the fabric to make their notches. And a lot of people do that, and you will even see it on pattern directions. But this actually weakens the fabric when you're doing an inside curve. So you want to do the notches separately and staggered between the two layers of fabric. So I like to start on the fashion fabric side because it's longer and you can see where you've made stitches or where you've made cuts. So anytime it starts to curve, we're going to do a little V, and I'm going to be very careful to only get the fashion fabric. Now, how many notches you make depends on how deep the curve is. The deeper the curve, the more little notches you need to make so that you allow the fabric to relax when you turn it to the right side. And you can tell this when you're done. You'll be able to tell that if you need to make more notches because the fabric will not lie smooth. And again, I am only clipping up to the stay stitching. I don't want to ruin that because again, it will cause the neckline to stretch or the waistline or whatever piece of the the garment this is. And here it's a little straighter, so I'm going to move my notch a little farther away. And again, I'm cutting only through one layer right now. And as long as there's a curve, I'm going to keep making notches. All right, so here we have the first pass. Now I'm going to flip it over, and now I'm going to cut the facing side. And it's important to do both, because without it, when you turn it right side out, it will buckle and pucker. Notice that I am making the notches in the clips in the facing side or lining side in between where I've made the clips on the fashion fabrics. So I have this clipped, and you might notice that there's only one line of stitching here rather than two, and that's because on the facing or lining side, you don't normally do stay stitching, so you don't have to worry about that. So now we're ready to turn this right side out. And if we kind of finger press, you can see that this curves very nicely. There's no gathering here. It has a nice smooth edge. There's a bevel. There's not a ridge of fabric. And you just do this all along the piece that you've sewn together and you've clipped. And again, if you see any places where there's puckering, any kind of gathering, you can come back in, flip it over, say, oh, I might need to make another little clip here. And you just make enough clips until the fabric totally relaxes and you can beat it into shape, so to speak. The next step in this process would be to understitch this.